With the 2023 NHL Draft Lottery not going the Montreal Canadiens' way, they had the 5th best chances for the 1st overall pick, but ended up with the 5th overall pick in 2023. But with all the conversation that's been going around about who the Habs should pick and who will be available, Russian sensation Matvei Michkov has been a hotly debated topic, and he looks like he could be available for the Montreal Canadiens pick. But all indications point to right now, the Montreal Canadiens not being as interested as we maybe thought. But we're going to be breaking down all the Habs news and all the draft rumors, so watch till the end for every single bit of it, and hit that subscribe button if you're new for daily hockey content and prospect content just like this leading up to the NHL draft. You won't want to miss it. Now, the Montreal Canadiens are in an incredibly weird spot right now with the 5th overall pick, and it's something that we need to talk about because with the draft rumors and what we've seen swirling so far, especially after the 2023 draft lottery and the U18 World Juniors, it looks like there is pretty big likelihood that, of course, Connor Bedard, Adam Fantilli, Leo Carlsson, and maybe even Will Smith are off the board first instead of Matvei Michkov. And with the Montreal Canadiens having the 5th overall pick, they might be the team thrust into the Michkov sweepstakes and confusion and drama the most. Now let's take a look at Matvei Michkov as well and how he could fit in the Habs if they were to pick him and why there might be reasons why the Habs aren't so interested in him. Now, for Michkov, I personally am of the opinion that I'm willing to accept the wait. I'm willing to accept those years that he'll be in the KHL, and in terms of his KHL contract, he'll be locked up in Russia until the 2025-26 season. But I think for certain teams out there, I mean, putting on that weight is something that it would be actually beneficial for them. I mean, you could have Matvei Michkov in a few years when he's a lot more refined and a lot even better, and you could still be bad in the meantime and still get even better picks in the meantime as well. But when we look at Michkov and what he's done over the years, it's just exceptional. You can see at 18 years old, 5'10", and as a right winger, you can see what he did this year and just what he's done the last couple of years. You can see in 2021, he got 16 points in 7 games in the U18 World Juniors, 12 goals, absolutely monstrous, outplayed Connor Bedard badly in that tournament. And you can see since then, he got some good KHL games in 2022, played mostly in the MHL and tore that league up. This year, it was a rough start for him, but he eventually got going. And once he was transferred to Sochi in the KHL, he got 20 points in 27 games as an 18-year-old and played in the MHL playoffs and got 7 points in 5 games there. But when it comes to Michkov, he is just progressively just done incredible things in Russia. Every single league, almost wherever he goes besides SKA in the KHL, he has been lights out offensively. And that shot, that ability to make plays in tight space and in tight pressure, he's so good in that aspect, and that elite franchise trait has really boosted him in a lot of different ways. But let's take a second here to welcome today's sponsor in World Hockey Manager. The best way to create your dream hockey franchise is with World Hockey Manager, free on iOS and Android. Develop your players and prospects, train them up into becoming the next superstars to take your franchise to the top. But one of my favorite features in World Hockey Manager is upgrading your stadium from a pee-wee rink all the way to the best in the world. You can face off against other players and other teams worldwide in the daily rank matches as well as tournaments. There's also the World Hockey Manager World Cup, which is a 24-hour group stage tournament, and you'll also be able to acquire older World Cup heroes and NHL pros. And starting on May 12th on the World Hockey Manager, you'll be able to play through the brand new legendary player mission through hard work and different submissions, and will be able to claim your own Art Ross card. And if you use the unique code on the screen, H566W1100, you'll be able to redeem 100 coins worth $8. To do that, go on the settings button in the top left corner, click the green redeem voucher button, and enter the unique code to get your $8 worth of coins. So make sure you go to the description of the pinned comment and download World Hockey Manager. It really helps out the channel and every bit is appreciated. Thank you so much, World Hockey Manager, for sponsoring today's video. So this is a player at his peak I think could be potentially the second best prospect of this draft. And even though I think that's a little bit slim for that to happen, the goal scoring ability is just absolutely undeniable. And the way he's able to use his speed as well to get in those areas is just exceptional too. And his playmaking has definitely taken a step. I mean, you see in those 27 KHL games, he got more assists than he got goals. And that's an underrated aspect of what he's been able to build with his offensive toolkit. But if Michkov develops and reaches his peak, to me, he'll be one of the best goal scorers in the NHL, one of the best offensive players in the NHL, bar none. But that's just the problem. That's the question. Does Michkov actually reach his peak, and how long will it take to get there? For the Montreal Canadiens, they're stuck right in the weird situation where for Montreal, we've seen, of course, comments by Kent Hughes and the management, how they're still trying to rebuild, still in the process of getting to that next level, and they're not quite there yet, which might allude to maybe them being a lot more open for Matvei Michkov. But again, we've heard reports that that might not be the case, that they might be going for a safer pick. Earlier in the season, we heard tons of reports how they were extremely interested in both Dalibor Dvorsky as well as David Reinbacher, two players that I think are one of the more safer picks of this draft, even if I do think both of those guys will be solid NHL players in the future. But it seems like so far the Montreal Canadiens' philosophy has been a little bit more safe than sorry, and Matvei Michkov is the ultimate risk. I mean, 5th overall is not a pick you want to mess up, and I think there is a bigger chance that Michkov doesn't pan out compared to a Will Smith, a Carlsson, a Fantilli, or a Connor Bedard. Now, back in my mock draft a few days ago, this was not a situation that came up. I had the Sharks selecting Michkov and Will Smith going to the Montreal Canadiens, and I think for the Habs, that would be the best case scenario. But the more I think about it, and the more we've seen also revealed from different insiders around the league, especially surrounding San Jose's pick, it seems less and less likely that they're going to go after a Michkov, and Will Smith will very likely be their pick, or Leo Carlsson if he were to be available. But it seems like the Sharks will be taking one of the top centermen in the draft class with that 4th overall pick, which very likely leaves the Montreal Canadiens with maybe the hardest choice in the entire draft. Now, this was also a good point raised up by Marco Diamaco of the Montreal Hockey Now, saying, after all, Michkov is arguably the second best prospect in this draft and could come over in 2026 as a matured 21-year-old on a 3-year entry-level contract, earning $950K for 3 years while the Montreal Canadiens enter their contention window. And that's a really interesting piece because when it comes to Michkov and the contract debate and just how much has been there, it's always a negative. It's always, oh, there's going to be 3 years until he gets here. It's going to be horrible. That wait is going to be awful. But then you realize that they could sign him to that $950K entry-level deal and have Michkov for a lot of his prime at an affordable cap hit, and it would very likely, if Michkov booms, be one of the best contracts in the league, and one of the best contracts in terms of money per points in the entire league for sure. Michkov at 21 years old would hopefully have that extra development in the KHL and hopefully round out his game a little bit more, getting a lot more bulky, and I think by the time he comes to the Montreal Canadiens as a 21-year-old making $950K, that could be when Michkov truly unlocks that talent. And I think for Montreal, it's an interesting timetable. Do you want to wait 3 years for Michkov? Is that enough to wait for him? And I think for the Montreal Canadiens, it would definitely burn because I do think they maybe want him in maybe a year, maybe 2 years if it's a perfect world. But if I'm Montreal, I just don't think I need to rush things, especially with how good Michkov can be. Now, going on to an Athletic article by Arpon Basu talking about the Matvei Michkov situation and what Kent Hughes also had to say about Michkov and potentially the Montreal Canadiens selecting him. And this is really important. Kent Hughes said this: "For sure, it scares us more than it would another prospect because of the obvious reasons, but I couldn't tell you today." Canadiens general manager Kent Hughes said Monday after a long pause when asked if the organization is afraid of drafting Michkov. "If we determine that Michkov is more talented than the other available players, we'll have a decision to make. For now, we have a lot of work to do on his file, first of all as a player, and second of all the risks that would come with it, and from there, we'll make a decision." But Kent Hughes openly acknowledges how risky it could be, how afraid the Habs are of drafting Michkov with his contract situation, and that's not nothing. It's coming right from the general manager's mouth that the Habs could be looking elsewhere. Also, another interesting quote here from Kent Hughes saying, "We certainly value hockey sense, character. Those are two that are going to come out all the time. Compete is another one," Hughes said, of what the Canadiens look for in draft prospects. But it's interesting. I think as you put a team together, there's a difference between drafting and roster construction, so to speak. When you're at the draft, we value hockey sense. But that doesn't mean that if there's another player who brings certain qualities as such a distinctive player compared to his peers, that the player that we draft wasn't necessarily the smartest hockey player, or the player that we draft wasn't necessarily of the highest character of the players available. But there's certainly qualities that we put a premium on and are looking for in all players that we draft. Now, here's the thing. In terms of the Habs drafting Matvei Michkov, I think this quote might be the most alarming out of them all personally, because there's a lot to like about Matvei Michkov, but I don't know if the hockey sense character and compete are the biggest things that Michkov brings out in his game. Things that did get better, I would say, with Sochi. I think the compete got a little bit better. He was a little more intense, but he's definitely not going to be like a Marco Kasper, absolutely gunning at every shift, just destroying as many players as possible and trying to get the puck back with the most intensity you've ever seen. That's not Michkov's game, and I feel like with what we've also seen in the past with the Habs and this current regime with the Montreal Canadiens, especially regarding the Yaroslav Koski pick, I just feel like for the Habs, their philosophy might be going in a different direction, and especially considering some of the prospects that they have available in number 5, like a Zach Benson, players like Leonard, who are incredibly intense with the puck and have a lot of character and hockey sense as well. That might be a lot more likely for what the Habs go for. Now, these quotes are also super important. Hughes was asked about picking for organizational need as opposed to best player available, and he said that the Canadiens saw 2 players as being extremely close in terms of talent or potential. They might look at the position he plays as a tiebreaker. He made it sound like the evaluation of Michkov compared to his peers would have a similar dynamic. Listen, now that we all know where we're picking, if we had won the lottery and knew absolutely we were picking number 1, we probably wouldn't have to dig into it with the same level of detail. But we're going to do that and try to understand as best as we can what those obstacles are. I think a lot of it is going to be difficult to predict, but I think it's going to be for any team. It's kind of a risk-reward assessment for any team that's considering drafting him. I would imagine, as I said about positional preference, preference, that it would be a tiebreaker. So I have to believe that you're considering Michkov and another player that you deem very, very comparable in terms of talent and potential, and those factors are probably going to weigh him down. But we're not there yet where I can say we believe there are others equal to him or that he's equal to them for that matter. So it also seems with this quote as well, talking about positional preference and what the Habs will be looking for, he, of course, with Michkov being a right wing, Ken Hughes talks about Michkov's situation and says that in terms of positional preference, if a player is on the same talent and potential, that might bring him down. And it seems like the Montreal Canadiens are saying because he's a winger, that they're less inclined to draft him. If there's a similar player with a similar position and similar talent, that they'll go for a player of a more important position, likely a center or a defenseman. And that's kind of what we've seen, and what we've seen rumored as well with the Montreal Canadiens. Even if they've been in on Pierre-Luc Dubois, it still seems like they might go for another center in this draft and with 5th overall. Now, the thing that does confuse me a lot in a lot of different ways with Montreal is their positional preference in this draft, because I will say if Will Smith is available for the Habs, then absolutely they should end up picking him. But there's also a debate to be said here as well, because we've talked about Pierre-Luc Dubois, how likely he is to go to the Montreal Canadiens, how it's almost a lock right now, whether it's in free agency or via trade. And of course, for the Habs, if they're going to go after him, he's going to be their second-line center, they're potentially their first-line center as a more offensive guy to Nick Suzuki, perhaps. And that would solve a lot of the Habs center issues. If they don't go after Pierre-Luc Dubois, then absolutely take a center 5th overall, whatever you need to do. A player like Oliver Moore or Ryan Leonard or Will Smith or even a Dalibor Dvorsky would be interesting on the team. But if you're going to go after Pierre-Luc Dubois, why are there concerns over Matvei Michkov and him playing wing? Even a Zach Benson, perhaps. I get that it's not set in stone. I get that he's obviously not on the team yet or right now or maybe ever, and there's a possibility that it doesn't happen. But at the same time, there's so much smoke to that fire, and to me, I think if the Habs, again, are looking for that future, looking for that plan, I just feel like if they're going to draft a center at least, it can be somebody that can play wing. Maybe potentially a Ryan Leonard who can play center and can play right wing as well. That's the type of pick that I think could make a lot of sense for the Habs, where they could have maybe a backup plan, but that backup plan can still be good even if they do go after Dubois. But even in saying that, we have no idea what the Montreal Canadiens are going to do. They could obviously still go for Michkov. They could go for so many different guys. The Montreal Canadiens pick is by far, I would say, the most wide open and the most influential in this draft. They could go for Michkov, or Michkov could slip. They could go for Dvorsky or Reinbacher like it was rumored earlier, and those could absolutely happen. They could go for one of the US NTDP guys. They could go for Will Smith if he's available. Oliver Moore, Ryan Leonard would make a lot of sense for them. So many different options for the Habs right now, and to me, I mean, we might not even know until draft day what ends up happening. It feels like there is still a lot of work to be done with the Habs and their scouting department and what they'll do, but they have a big decision coming up. Matvei Michkov could be the pick, but as of right now, it seems more and more likely that the Habs will end up skipping on him. But let us know in the comments down below, what do you guys think the Montreal Canadiens should do with the 5th overall pick? Do you think Matvei Michkov should be the pick if he's available? Do you think you should go for somebody else, a Will Smith, a Dvorsky, a Leonard, Moore, the Reinbacher? Let us know all your thoughts down below. Of course, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell for more prospect content leading up to the draft just like this every day. And of course, share the video of all the hockey fans you guys know online, all the Habs fans you guys know online, and click on this card for my 2023 draft content right in one playlist. My name is Nathan. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.